March 6, 1944, Anzio beachhead, Italy. A damp coastal mist clings low over churned fields, erasing distance, hiding everything beyond 50 yards. Corporal James Halperin, 24, sits in the cramped driver's seat of a Sherman M4A1. Metal presses close around him. The engine breathes slow heat through the steel floor, restrained under strict command. Stand down, conserve fuel, await coordination orders. He listens to the idle hum, steady and contained, each vibration a reminder that this machine is meant to move, not wait. Inside the tank, breath fogs on the metal walls before melting into thin lines of water. Halperin wipes his glove across one patch, clearing only a smear. Beyond the narrow periscope slits, nothing moves. Just the gray wash of morning weather swallowing the front line. Somewhere ahead, the 45th Infantry Division presses forward without armor support, separated by fog and silence. Boots in mud, rifles carried into the unknown. The radio crackles. A clipped voice repeats the standing order. No movement without armor support approval. No exceptions. Static follows, thick and incomplete. Halperin adjusts the dial, catching only fragments. Reports of German anti-tank guns, uncertain bearings, men raising concerns that vanish mid-transmission. The fog turns every warning into rumor. The gunfire ahead changes. It sharpens. Short bursts at first, then a longer rattle. A shout bleeds through the mist. Not a command, a scream, the kind that drops at the end. Halperin stiffens. He knows the range. He knows that infantry out there now face something more precise than small arms. The kind of threat that turns a quiet field into a kill zone. He checks the fuel gauge. A slow tick downward, just from idling. The machine feels impatient. The tracks, still caked in frozen beach sand, hold a forward pull. He can feel it through the seat. Power unused becomes tension. And tension grows. His crew waits with him. Loader breathing slow behind. Gunner tapping one finger against the elevation wheel. They follow orders. They stay still. But they hear the same distant struggle. They understand the clock moving without them. Another message arrives. The same one. Do not advance. Halperin stares at the throttle. Black steel, cold under the glove. His knuckles tighten. He thinks of the road behind them. Trucks carrying crates of ammunition, fuel drums strapped upright, medics in soft-sided ambulances holding for permission. A supply chain paused mid-pulse. In war, machines are built to keep rhythm. A convoy stalled is a heartbeat skipped. Another scream reaches them. Short. Cut off. Halperin's jaw shifts. Orders exist to protect men, but orders can also leave them to be found later, tagged and loaded under new silence. He feels sweat break along his shoulders despite the cold. He leans forward, 1 inch. He waits for someone else to act first. No one does. The fog hides the front line, but it cannot hide the truth forming inside the steel walls. Waiting may kill more soldiers than advancing. His foot lowers. The engine deepens. Tracks tense. A rule is about to break. Quietly. Before the war, James Halperin worked maintenance on turbines at a steel plant in Pittsburgh. The factory floor offered structure. Conveyor belts moved with purpose. Steam valves hissed in steady rhythm. He learned to read machines the way others read people. A shift in vibration warned him sooner than a supervisor's inspection ever could. He trusted the hum of engines. Promises from managers did not carry the same certainty. His life followed pattern. Cleaning metal, greasing fittings, checking gauges twice before trusting the first reading. When the plant went quiet at night, he would walk the line and listen to the silence of well-kept systems. Precision calmed him. Repetition kept doubt contained. He believed a flawless machine showed respect for the workers who relied on it. Military service replaced the factory with a Sherman M4A1. The smell of hot steel followed him. The radial engine behind his seat became the new turbine. He cleaned the tank's controls with the same methodical motions he once used on the plant's switches. He wiped each surface until it reflected back a faint outline of his glove. Crew members joked he talked to gears. He never denied it. A tank that ran smooth kept men alive. Inside the steel hull, his senses sharpened into habit. He counted sounds without thinking. 9 cylinders cycling in a tight circle. Tracks settling against earth, each segment a small clank. The faint expansion creak when the engine warmed. The hull breathed. He listened to that breath. A machine, alive in purpose. Routine gave him focus. Focus gave his crew confidence. Their trust mattered more than rank. Officers issued orders. Halperin carried men. He valued the difference. Home was different now. His father, once a mill hand, lost work when the Depression shut the plant. Illness kept his younger brother from enlisting. Responsibility shifted to Halperin the day he signed enlistment papers. The Army gave him a uniform. The tank gave him something else: space to control, maintain, understand. 30 tons of moving steel became his answer to chaos. Keep it running. Keep it moving. Keep men safe. Some soldiers craved glory. Halperin preferred certainty. He looked for clues in machinery, not speeches. The battlefield forced change, but habit remained his anchor. He checked bolts twice. He listened for misfires before the gunner noticed. He tapped gauges when the reading felt wrong. His crew learned the quiet signals. A shorter breath, a longer pause, before he announced a concern aloud. In Pittsburgh, timing meant production. Here, timing meant survival. He watched others laugh at caution. Some mocked routine as fear disguised. He ignored them. War punished the careless long before the brave. And when laughter returned this morning, disbelief at waiting while infantry moved blind, Halperin felt the same pressure he once felt in the factory when a turbine ran hotter than it should. A warning, a decision point. Fog covered the field ahead. Orders insisted on stillness. But 30 tons of industry did not exist to idle. Tracks were forged to move forward. Steel resisted patience. Halperin sat ready, engine prepared, hands calm. Routine aligned with defiance. He believed the tank's true purpose was motion. Forward motion. Forward is where men needed him. Would you have trusted the engine over the order? Every vehicle behind Halperin's tank is a lung for the soldiers ahead. Ammunition crates stacked in wooden ribs. Fuel drums strapped upright like sealed oxygen. A convoy built to breathe war into the front line. When the system moves, the battalion lives. When it stalls, the front suffocates. At Anzio, that breath is shallow. The beachhead lies pressed against the sea, a fragile pocket waiting to be punctured. German artillery holds the high ground. Each shell fired from above reminds every man here that the enemy sees more than they do. Timetables hold chaos in control. Arrive 15 minutes late, and riflemen count their last cartridges by touch. Arrive 30 minutes late, and medics fold gauze into wounds that require more than fabric and pressure. War reduces life into a schedule. The Sherman at the front is not celebrated for armor or firepower. Today it is the lead plate of a conveyor line, a delivery machine. 30 tons of movement pulling every truck behind it into relevance. Its tracks are the path that keeps supplies from sinking into the mud. If the tank halts, everything behind it freezes. Steel designed to advance becomes weight without purpose. Halperin listens to the radio again. Headquarters warns that armor cannot risk isolation. The order arrives clean. The risk is not. Somewhere in the mist, infantry push farther from ammunition, farther from fuel, farther from the medics waiting in the convoy. The distance grows without number. Fog hides the gap, but tension measures it accurately. He hears another artillery strike ahead, a low thump, then 2 more, the kind that precedes silence. He imagines soldiers flattening themselves against cold ground, helmets sinking into mud. He counts the seconds between impacts. The German guns are finding range. A tightening noose. A field turned into a blind corridor. The system asks for patience. The system requires confirmation. The system speaks with caution that protects hardware first. A halted tank avoids mechanical risk, yet each minute of delay increases human risk. Halperin feels that pressure gather inside like steam building behind a valve. He spent years watching gauges creep upward. Too much pressure and metal fails. A rupture punishes hesitation. Ground moisture lifts into low vapor behind his exhaust. The mist pulls away into faint curls, showing movement denied. This machine was meant to push. Engines idle with a pulse that expects release. He can feel the tension through his boots. A rhythm waiting to continue. Forward is necessary. Forward is duty. Halperin thinks of the convoy wheels behind him. Tires softened by the rain, axles heavy with ammunition. If the mud grips too long, the line may never restart. A single stalled tank can bury a day's lifeline for an entire battalion. He knows this. He was trained to know this, but training also reminds him that orders stand until they change. No one changes them. A distant scream tears through the mist again. Short, abrupt, not repeated. He looks at the periscope slit. Nothing visible, everything inevitable. The system prioritizes machines. But machines exist to protect the men who advance. A convoy without motion serves no one. The math on paper demands patience. The math in the mud demands action. Halperin places his hand on the throttle. Not tight, ready. He watches the fog inhale the exhaust. The heartbeat of the system waits for a single decision. Gunfire ahead shifts again. No longer scattered. It gathers into organized bursts, controlled by timing rather than panic. Halperin listens. He hears the difference. He has always trusted patterns. Chaos repeats only when someone directs it. Something ahead is positioned with intent. Through the periscope slit, shapes flash inside the fog. Not men moving, something dragged. A harsh metal scrape, low and deliberate, cuts through the damp morning. The soil trembles beneath the tank's steel floor plates. A vibration deep enough to bypass hearing. Heavy equipment being angled into place. A weapon designed to halt armor before it sees danger. A pack gun adjusts its stance long before the barrel aligns. The fog keeps secrets. It swallows anything beyond 50 yards. Halperin squints through a lens covered in condensation. Each breath he takes fogs the glass, then clears, revealing nothing. Only occasional flickers of contrast. A darker shadow moving where a ditch might lie. A fence post that vanishes before the mind decides what it was. A sparrow erupts from the mud in front of the tank. Its wings beat urgently, cutting a sharp path into the sky. Wildlife reacts before soldiers understand. Even a small creature knows the air has changed. Radio static hisses back to life, then severs abruptly into clean silence. No voices, no static, no fragments. A communications line drowned by terrain or masked by interference. Silence becomes confirmation that something manipulates the field. Inside the hull, the loader whispers a rumor. German Paquet crews were sighted this week, aligning kill zones along expected routes. Narrow silhouettes invisible until a flash marks intent. Men who saw them rarely reported full detail afterward. The rest of the crew stays quiet. The loader has voiced what they already fear. A distant concussion rolls across the mist. The periscope lens trembles. The vibration is faint yet unmistakable. Artillery calibrating distance. Every test round takes life as a data point. Halperin counts. One strike, pause, another. The interval shortens. The next will land where soldiers run. The infantry ahead start to withdraw, slipping back toward where they believe armor waits. But they pull back in uneven motions. Some fall without finishing the movement. Cries stretch and break as the wind changes direction. Men retreating without cover create an outline for the hidden guns. Halperin looks behind. The convoy's engines rev without instruction. Drivers tighten hands around steering wheels slick with nervous sweat. Trucks bump forward inches at a time, then stop, then move again. Fear of stillness overtakes discipline. The artery of movement twitches. A single strike could tear it open. Condensation trails rise from the tank's exhaust. The pattern is irregular now. The engine's idle strains slightly, sensing demand that leadership refuses to authorize. Pressure builds not only in machines, but in men forced to wait for danger to finish preparing. Halperin's jaw locks. The warnings accumulate too quickly. He feels the moment before rupture, same as he once felt in factory pipes ready to burst. He knows these signs. The system demands blindness. The field demands sight. Orders insist that caution saves lives. But each new clue proves the risk of obedience grows heavier. Metal scrapes again. Closer. Something hidden has finished its aim. Halperin leans forward, foot suspended above the throttle. Halperin's glove curls tighter around the throttle. The engine waits beneath him, heat building in measured pulses. He hears the lieutenant's voice crack over the radio again, firm and direct. Any armor that advances without command will face court-martial. No exceptions. The words strike with official certainty. They carry weight, but they do not carry men. Inside the hull, the loader shifts uneasily. The gunner keeps eyes fixed on the fog, hands hovering near the controls but unmoving. They know regulation. Unauthorized movement turns one decision into a tribunal case. Disobedience stains a record permanently. Halperin understands. Yet rules simplify only when danger stays visible. Fog removes clarity. Distance removes logic. The battlefield rarely waits for permission. Another burst of rifle fire cuts through the mist. Isolated. A single pattern. Then a scream longer than the rest. Halperin pauses his breath to listen. A man's voice, strained by pain, shifts into silence. He counts the seconds afterward. Silence holds more danger than sound. He lowers his eyes to the fuel gauge. It barely moves. The engine idles without demand. Steel warms in place. A tank that waits becomes predictable. Predictability on a battlefield is a target. Halperin remembers the factory. Turbines cooled too long would warp under sudden restart. Steam valves jammed under pressure spikes caused by inaction. He learned that constant movement protected the machine. Pause too long and failure built unseen. War runs under similar rules. Delay becomes hazard. Hesitation writes casualty lists. He thinks again of emergency maintenance he once performed without permission. A shutdown alert missed. Halperin intervened. Pressure released just before rupture. No medals, no reprimand. Just a quiet nod from a supervisor who understood one thing. The system survived because someone acted. Now the system is a battalion caught in fog. He hears artillery far ahead. Not random. Adjusted by short corrections. German gunners finding precise range. He imagines infantry pressing into mud. Helmets tilted. Hands searching for cover that does not exist. Men measure seconds by how close death feels. The radio falls silent again. Not a single word from those in front. Communication denied, answers withheld. Rules continue, but questions multiply. The loader speaks softly. We move without orders. They court us. The gunner doesn't speak. He only watches Halperin's foot. Convoy engines idle behind them, each one part of a necessary heartbeat. The artery of movement waits for a signal no one has strength to give. Logistics holds war together. Stillness tears it apart. Halperin inhales the confined air. Oil, metal, heat. His mind reduces everything into a simple equation. Obey and lose many. Disobey and risk few. A tank built for combat asks nothing but forward motion. Every machine deserves purpose. Men ahead deserve more than rules. He hears another scream. Short. Cut away. Silence returns. It demands a reply. The fog hides the cost of waiting. The order protects rank. Instinct protects life. Halperin's foot lowers a fraction. Not enough to move, enough to decide. A question forms, not spoken, not shared, only lived. What is a tank for if not to move when others fall? Would you have chosen orders over lives? Halperin exhales once. No words, no countdown. His foot lowers fully onto the throttle. The Sherman answers with force. Steel gears mesh. The engine transitions from idle into power. 30 tons of armor commit to motion. The sudden forward surge feels like truth, finally allowed to move. Inside the hull, inertia throws the crew back into their seats. The loader curses under his breath. The gunner snaps his hands into position, bracing against the shock. Training overrides hesitation. Every man inside returns to practiced instinct. Doubt becomes secondary to survival. The fog breaks in irregular pockets as the tank advances. Each gap reveals fragments of a battlefield aligning itself. Halperin spots the first confirmation. The low rectangular shield of a Pak-40 anti-tank gun planted directly across the road. Perfect elevation. Perfect range? It was built to kill tanks exactly
German operators
like his. Pivot instinctively, trying to correct for the unexpected angle of approach. Their machine was prepared for a stationary target, not a tank closing distance with decisive speed. The gap between steel grows smaller by the second. Rifle fire cracks against the Sherman's turret. The rounds ping off hardened armor. Harmless noise against a moving decision. Halperin accelerates. Treads churn through mud, spitting torn earth behind them. Forward momentum turns the tank into a blunt command. Speed becomes shield. There is no time for precision gunnery. No time for elevation adjustments. The battlefield turns into direct collision. At 20 yards, the Pak gun crew makes one last attempt to fire. They adjust elevation. The barrel dips. The loader reaches for a shell. But motion defeats calculation. A static line cannot outguess advancing mass. The Sherman strikes. The sound is not explosive. It is metallic collapse. A scream of steel stretched past tolerance. The Pak gun's shield buckles inward before the carriage splinters. Timber legs shatter under the weight. The weapon flips and twists aside. A broken limb torn from the shoulder joint of German defense. Operators dive away, rolling over churned soil. They scramble for new cover, but the momentum of the tank leaves them behind. Halperin drives through the wreckage, letting the force of movement clear the path. He does not fire a single round. The machine itself is the weapon. Mud streaks across the hull. The tank continues forward several yards before Halperin reduces throttle. Not a full stop, just enough to register change. The loader peers toward the right view slit. The gunner mutters confirmation. The Pak gun is silent. Its angle no longer threatens anyone. Behind the tank, the fog hangs differently now. The infantry who had retreated seconds earlier stare upward from the ground. Their screams have stopped, not from shock of injury, from relief that feels too sudden to process. Their protection has arrived not through orders, but through motion. The convoy begins to roll behind Halperin's tank. One truck, then another. The artery reopens. Logistics pulse forward again. Inside the hull, the crew regains breath. No cheering, no praise. Only the return of routine necessities. Checking gauges, scanning fog, preparing for whatever stands next in line. Rules mattered before. Now results exist. A system built on caution is saved by a single engine refusing stillness. Forward motion keeps men alive. Infantry who had braced for annihilation now rise from the soil. Mud clings to uniforms, but breath returns. They advance cautiously behind the Sherman's rear hull, using the shattered Pak gun as fractured cover. Seconds ago, that weapon promised their end. Now it is their shield. Halperin sees none of their faces clearly, only fleeting silhouettes moving through the gray. Their rifles lift with renewed direction. The radio, silent moments earlier, bursts into competing voices. Strain mixes with disbelief. A fragment breaks through clearly. German line broken. Another, Convoy cleared to move. Efficiency replaces panic. Units previously separated reconnect in fast relay. Halperin listens without comment. The results speak for themselves. The cause remains unnamed. He hears a report of riflemen reaching a defensive fold along the road. Casualties appear fewer than feared. Medics shout coordinates for pickup instead of last rites. The artillery that threatened to measure their distance now fires sporadically, losing rhythm. The German position, surprised by motion, pulls back. The retreat leaves behind crates that were meant to sustain the ambush. Ammunition, field gear, maps rolled and abandoned in haste. Proof that the enemy planned to cut the artery, not just scratch at it. Behind Halperin, the convoy rolls forward. Truck by truck, the flow resumes. Engines rumble in uneven unison. The pulse of logistics returns. If supply lines are the bloodstream of armies, this is circulation restored. No celebration, only momentum. Relief in the form of movement. Halperin continues forward at a controlled pace. He does not let the tank settle back into idling. Stillness breeds doubt. The hull vibrates from the stress of impact. Bolts hold, but he feels every complaint in the steel. Machines pay for decisions. He listens for signs of internal strain. Transmission noise, track tension, engine temperature. The Sherman absorbed force meant to stop it. For now, it remains reliable. The crew inside perform checks with quiet discipline. No one talks about what they avoided. The gunner inspects bearings. The loader adjusts ready shells. The radio operator tries to strengthen contact with command. Routine returns like breath after cold water. They know that praise rarely arrives where orders were broken. Ahead, infantry slow their advance long enough to glance at the tank that led them out. They do not wave. They simply acknowledge the presence of armor where armor should have been all along. Their silence contains gratitude without ceremony. Halperin views the road ahead. Fog still hides distance. The battalion continues deeper into contested ground, protected by a lead plate of steel that refused to wait. He thinks about the court-martial promised over the radio. The threat feels distant now, smaller than the cost of obedience would have been. Regulations remain. Lives remain too. The system rarely highlights a single gear. Victory credits the machine, not the man who kept it turning. Halperin knows his role. Invisible success. He accepts that survival for many will never attach his name to their story. Screams once defined this field. Their absence is the only reward required. Silence becomes confirmation that instinct was correct. Halperin moves with conviction. Behind him, the war breathes again. Would anyone have known if he chose not to move? By late afternoon, the fog thins and reveals the churned ground behind them. The Sherman rolls back into the staging area at reduced speed. The machine that carried a battalion's survival now shows its strain. Scratched plates, dented fenders, dried mud hardened into ribs along the tracks. The engine idles with a rasp that betrays the collision's force. Halperin keeps the controls steady until the tank settles into its parking slot. The engine sighs into silence. Officers approach immediately. Their uniforms remain crisp, untouched by the mud outside the perimeter. Expressions remain controlled. Their anger is professional, not emotional. One speaks first, delivering the conclusion already decided. Regulations violated, operational risk introduced without authorization, potential damage to irreplaceable equipment. They cite codes, paragraph numbers, exact subclauses covering insubordination under combat conditions. Halperin stands at attention, posture rigid. He offers a direct account. No embellishment, no mention of screams in the fog or artillery finding range. He keeps his report factual. Movement initiated. Paquet position neutralized. Convoy freed to advance. He describes events as machine actions. Tank moved. Obstacle removed. Supply restored. There is no argument, only facts. Court-martial speculation appears among staff officers. A few voices lower to whispers as casualty numbers update across the field. The expected toll fails to arrive. Men who should have been lost remain alive. Field medics confirm fewer body bags than planning estimates predicted. Those numbers shift tone. Whispers dissipate. The official reprimand remains, but punishment softens under weight of survival. The phrase, unauthorized forward movement, stays on the record. The phrase, saved an entire company, does not appear in print. Later, one commander pulls Halperin aside. The conversation occurs quietly, away from the staging line. His tone is even, clipped. He repeats the instruction that defined the morning. Next time, wait. Two words following carry a different meaning. Good instincts. Neither phrase expands. The officer leaves before acknowledgement can form, a warning paired with reluctant respect. Halperin logs the reprimand. He knows medals follow visibility, not necessity. Machines operate without applause. Men who keep them moving learn the same discipline. He accepts the consequence as part of the task he chose. Action when hesitation would kill. Silence when recognition would complicate. Inside the tank later that evening, the crew checks the hull for structural compromise. The loader traces the bent edge of a plate, muttering about what could have happened had they hesitated. The gunner offers a quiet remark. "We moved because you did." He returns to inspecting elevation gears without waiting for response. Their trust requires no formal acknowledgement. The tank receives minor repairs. Fuel is replenished. Ammunition restocked. By nightfall, it looks like any other vehicle preparing for another advance. The field holds no marker identifying what happened hours earlier. Machinery forgets impacts once stress is welded away. Halperin sits briefly against the hull, listening to small pops of cooling metal. He hears distant trucks repositioning. The system continues forward. That is the only confirmation he needs that the choice was correct. Results replace justification. Officers return to charts. Infantry return to new positions. The convoy prepares for the next push inland. A single Sherman driver folds into the machine once again, his record amended but unchanged where it matters most. A debt remains, not owed to Halperin, but carried quietly by those who survived without knowing why. Years pass. The Anzio beachhead shifts from lived memory into a line inside operational summaries. The battle's significance is measured in miles gained, casualties avoided, tonnage delivered ashore. Reports show improvement in supply flow that day. They do not show why. They reduce danger to percentages and survival to arithmetic. A single tank's movement becomes untraceable inside charts where outcomes matter more than origins. No medal is listed beside Corporal James Halperin's name. The formal record maintains only what can be standardized: his violation, his reprimand, his continued service afterward. The paperwork remembers disobedience. It does not record what was prevented. It does not archive the screams that stopped because a machine advanced when others waited. The silence of saved men remains the only enduring testimony. Infantry who survived that morning continue their lives. Some return home, build families, and later explain they lived through Anzio. They do not mention a Sherman they never saw clearly, but unknowingly, they carry a fragment of that decision. Lives extended because steel refused paralysis. That is the quiet inheritance of logistics. Victories arrive through systems that move unseen beneath the visible fight. Halperin finishes his service with the same steady routine he carried through combat. He transfers his skills back into civilian machinery, factories, vehicle depots, repair shops. He cleans tools with slow, precise strokes, a ritual from the war preserved in peace. He trusts motion, maintenance, and discipline more than speeches or recognition. Every engine he repairs becomes another reminder. A machine's worth is proven through its ability to move when motion matters. History often credits strategy crafted in headquarters. But battles also depend on mechanics inside cramped compartments who understand what a machine must do when hesitation threatens collapse. A supply line is not a theory. It is metal, fuel, bearings, and men making choices under pressure. Industry does not exist to preserve itself. It exists to push forward. The Sherman that struck the Paquet gun is eventually reassigned, later returned to depots, and one day removed from service. The dent from impact remains faint beneath paint layers. Welders note it as stress damage and move on. No inscription marks the reason that plate bent. The machine disappears into the flow of replacements, its past sealed under new steel. Halperin keeps working. He does not speak often of the reprimand. He does not defend himself against history's omissions. He knows survival for others was the only outcome that mattered. Systems improved because a single operator chose to act before permission arrived. Logistics rarely earns monuments. It functions like veins beneath armor, hidden, constant, carrying life to where it is needed. Wars are remembered through iconic offensives and named commanders, but they are won when movement continues, in places where hesitation should have ended it. The legacy of the machine that refused silence lives in the simple truth Halperin carried. Sometimes the safest order is the one that breaks the rule designed for different moments. Sometimes survival demands motion. Would you have kept 30 tons of purpose waiting in the fog?